Hello and welcome to Ask Your Academic. Today's session will cover the MSc Food Security, and we're joined by Professor Gareth Jenkins, who is the programme lead, and he's here to answer any questions you might have about the programme. We are recording the session today, so don't panic if you miss anything. You can go back and watch it in your own time, and we'll get the recording sent out probably early next week. If you've got any questions that are around funding or accommodation, things like that, I'll pop some useful links into the chat box for you. And we've also got an online postgraduate event coming up on the 7th of May. So that's just Tuesday next week. So if you've got any questions, that would be a really good session to attend for that. Gareth, would you like to introduce yourself and give us a bit of an overview of the programme?
Yeah, certainly. Welcome, everybody. My name is Gareth Jenkins. Yes, I'm the program lead for MSc Food Security. This MSc is really about trying to address the problem of feeding the world's rapidly growing population. As you probably know, the world's population is expected to increase to around about 10 billion, round about by 2050. We already have major problems in feeding the world's population. And obviously, it's only going to get more of a problem as time goes on. We're also trying to do this in an era of climate change, which makes things that much more difficult. So really, the program is a very broad program because food security is a very broad issue. It encompasses all of the social and political and economic aspects, but in particular, in our program, we talk about crop production, we talk about production of food from animals and so on. So it's important for people who are interested in food security to really have a broad perspective rather than just know about, one particular aspect, because it's all very interrelated. And that's why our particular program has this very broad coverage. So that's really what the program is about. It's really about the challenge of ensuring global food security and really encompassing, all aspects of that.
Thank you. And in terms of the classes, whereabouts are they typically held? Are you on main campus?
Yes, everything pretty much is held on main campus. Occasionally there are things which are not on main campus, but close by. And on main campus, we have diverse rooms in which we are asked to give our various sessions. So the students will get to see the campus a little bit, rather like the lecturers. We end up in all sorts of rooms all over the campus. But teaching is absolutely fine. Facilities.
Good way of keeping fit.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, facilities are good projection facilities, perfectly nice rooms and so on.
Perfect. And in terms of the optional courses, when should students expect to choose those? Is that right at the beginning, or do they get a bit of time to decide?
Yeah, what we do is we have a compulsory 3 courses in the first semester. Then students can choose their optional courses for the second semester. And we don't do that until early November because we want to give students a feel for the program, the sort of topics that we're going to be covering. And then we go into detail right at the beginning of November. We have a detailed session about the optional courses, and then students have a couple of weeks to decide what they want to do. So students should only enroll for the compulsory courses at the beginning and then enroll for the optional courses later on.
Perfect. And in terms of the research project, it's such a big part of an MSc. Can you tell us a bit more about that? So how do students choose a topic, a supervisor, and maybe some examples of what students have done in the past?
Yeah, sure. So as you say, the project counts for around about 1/3 of the MSc. It actually starts just about now and continues on till the middle of August. And that's the only thing that students focus on in that time. So the way this works is that students can start discussing with academic staff, thinking about what projects they might like to do really from the beginning of this year. So, really from January onwards, people start to think about that. They don't usually choose until probably February or March what their actual project's going to be. So there's plenty of time to think about it and to discuss it. Essentially, the allocation of projects works in one of 2 ways. academic staff associated with the program suggest topics. Then alternatively, students suggest topics and try to find a supervisor who's prepared to supervise that topic. So, for example, I usually work with the latter type of projects. I'll supervise pretty much anything within reason that students want to do. So, for example, what have we got this year? So I've got, I think, 4 project students, one of whom is looking at the impact of climate change on crop production in Nigeria. She's a Nigerian student, so I don't know anything about it. She does, hopefully. And, you know, I just direct her in her research and advise about the structure of the dissertation and so on. What are the others? We've got somebody, I think, working on grain production in China. I think I need to just check because some of the topics are only just being finalized, but we have diverse topics. So within the program, there will be people who suggest topics that are crop related, some topics that are more animal related, although not so many. And then most of the more social, political, economic, or, you know, general food security things, then I and a few other people tend to supervise.
Great. It sounds like there's a real kind of mix that you can really pick to suit your interests, which is good.
Yeah, within limits. I mean, there is, we have to obviously, you know, work with things that we vaguely know something about, but it depends on the academic. Some people, as I say, like myself, are prepared to supervise just about anything, and others have very particular topics that they're interested in, and they will suggest projects in that area. But generally speaking, students will find something that they will find interesting.
Perfect. And it's a really difficult question to answer, I know, but we're always asked, how often should students expect to be on campus in class in semester 1 and 2?
Right. So this is something which is really very different in master's study to compared to first degree study in many parts of the world. So I know in many parts of the world, students, you know, are sitting in lectures for many hours a day, every day, and that's, you know, that's the way they are taught. Master's study, we're more concerned with people developing an independent approach to their learning, being critical of things that they read. So finding their own reading material, being critical of it, discussing it, being able to write about it or whatever, or talk about it. So contact hours are a lot fewer than in many undergraduate courses. Some days there are no contact hours. Quite often students may have 1 or 2 lectures at the most. On the other hand, if they're doing anything that involves lab work, for example, then clearly that would involve, you know, more hours in the day. But one of the things I think students have to get used to is having a lot less contact hours in terms of lectures. However, they are expected to do a lot of work because they need to work towards the assignments that they're given for assessment. And that takes a lot of effort, you know, a lot of reading, a lot of thinking, gathering information from lots of different sources, putting it together maybe for an oral presentation or perhaps for some sort of written assignment. So there is a lot of work that can be done, and the students can then do it either in the comfort, hopefully, of their own flats or their own homes, or they can use the excellent facilities in the university library, for example, and other buildings where, you know, if I was a student now, I would spend most of my time in our new student-focused teaching building, which has absolutely beautiful facilities for working. So students will spend a lot of their time working independently and not so much on contact hours.
Do you find that some students, when they start their MSc, struggle a little bit just to the adjustment, because it is quite a shock to the system, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's different. As I say, in some parts of the world, they're very used to, you know, sitting in lectures, you know, a lot of the day in their undergraduate study, and they will not do that here. And the concept of independent learning, gathering information independently, critically assessing information, thinking about the pros and the cons for a particular topic, it's really quite difficult for some people to get to grips with. It's a different type of study, but it's what is expected of master's study.
It's all part of the experience as well in developing your skills, isn't it?
Absolutely. No, it's about developing learning skills. So it's really not about just absorbing information or being told information. We don't have exams. So, the student doesn't, absorb all of this information and then regurgitate it in an exam. They basically are directed in the lectures and other sessions that we have about the sort of things they should know about, clearly, and pointed in, the direction of learning materials. But it's then really, the student trying to develop their independent approach, finding information, gathering that information together, being critical of it, as I say, pros and cons of something, and then being able to talk or write about it.
Right. You mentioned no exams there. So how are students assessed? Is it a mix of different things for their different courses?
Right. So firstly, I said no exams. There is one course which does have a test, which contributes to the assessment. And I think there is another course which very few students do, one of the optional courses. Sorry, the one with the test is also an optional course, but there is one course which is optional, which has an exam associated with it. But I would say, well, firstly, students don't necessarily take those optional courses. So most of the assessment, if not all of the assessment for some students, is through oral presentations, sometimes talking and discussing a poster. So rather than giving a presentation with slides, they put a presentation up on a poster and they talk about that. Or written assignments. So you might have a particular question to answer, maybe in 500 or 1,000 words, that sort of thing. So one of the important things about assessment is that it should address the different skills of different students. So some students can talk very well, but they can't write. Some students can write very well, but they can't speak. So, we try to, and obviously lots of students can do both, but we do try to address or assess rather different skills, so that students can show their abilities in various ways. So we have a range of different types of assignments.
Perfect. And is there any practical work in any of the courses?
Yeah, so the practical work is optional. So there are two courses where you can do laboratory work. Firstly, there is a course, a laboratory-based and computer-based course on basic molecular laboratory skills, which some students, choose to do. Many students are not interested in lab work, so they don't do it. And then there's another optional course on plant genetic engineering, which again involves laboratory work, and again, it's optional. So many students actually do take that course, but others don't. So for those students who want to do lab work, there are opportunities. There's also the possibility of doing a lab-orientated project, if that's really what they want to do. But many students, the last thing they want to do is see a lab. So they stay away from it, and that's absolutely fine.
And do students get access to any learning materials before classes?
Yes, so we ask all lecturers to put up learning materials before classes, a day or two in advance, so that students can access the materials, think about it before. But in particular, they can take the learning materials along to the lecture with them, or the session with them, and then they can, annotate those slides or notes or whatever it is during the session. So we do try to ensure that all the learning materials are placed onto the university's server in advance.
Great. And what about after the programme? What sort of things do graduates go on to do?
Yeah, so as I say, food security is a very broad topic, and students come with different interests. So they end up doing all sorts of different things. So certainly a proportion of students, I'm not sure what percentage, maybe even 20% of students go on and do some sort of further study rather than getting a job. So there are some that go on and do another master's degree somewhere. And then there are, a number that do PhDs. So we do have several students every year doing PhDs, not necessarily in Glasgow. I mean, there have been some in Glasgow, but students do PhDs all over the place. So optional. So further study, is of interest to some. And then for the others, as I say, they do all sorts of things. So food security impacts on food production. So there's a lot of people interested in working in food production in some way or other. Food retail is one thing that some students get into, selling things in, I think we had one student selling grain in China or veterinary products in China. Then there are various government agencies and non-government agencies that are associated with food security, like the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. We had somebody working there. Various other organizations that help farmers in various countries in the world. So students do all sorts of different things. We have we don't, unfortunately, we're not unable to keep a really detailed record, firstly, because there's lots of students. And secondly, they don't contact us or they change their email addresses or whatever. So we don't have a list of everything, but certainly we've had students doing a huge variety of things.
It always really surprises me the different jobs that people go into that you hear, because it can be really mixed, and sometimes it's totally different to what their master's was, but they're just using those skills that they've learned.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's true.
And in terms of preparing for starting your master's, is there anything that students can be doing in the run-up? Any reading or anything like that?
No, absolutely. A number of things about that. Firstly, as I've said, food security is a very broad topic, and we have students coming from all sorts of different backgrounds. So we have we have a lot of students from a food background, so food science, food engineering, that sort of thing, although the program is not about food science and food engineering. But a lot of people are interested in food, so they come with those sort of degrees. We have people with agriculture, biotechnology, politics, economics, and all sorts of strange things that you wouldn't really expect, engineering and all sorts of. If people can demonstrate in their personal statement that they are really interested in food security and they understand about it, then we will accept them or we will offer them a place. So we do get students with diverse backgrounds. So that means we're well aware that students won't be familiar with some of the topics in the course with their particular background. Finding a student who knows something about animal production, crop production, social and economic, it's impossible pretty much. I don't think we've ever had one. So if we've got a student with an economics background, then they maybe need to do some reading about the biology. Likewise, if we have a student from food science background and they've never really done much biology, it's a good idea to read about those topics or those aspects that they're not familiar with. These days, modern science encompasses a little bit of molecular biology. So it's good for people to get that sort of background if they've never done any biology before. So I think the thing to do for the students is to think, well, what don't I know about that may be covered in this course, and look at the website to see the topics. They're welcome to ask me or anyone else what sort of reading they might do. So really just to try to become familiar with the sort of things that they're really not familiar with. Another useful thing is to just go away and read some reports related to food security. So if they go on to FAO.org, that's the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations.org, go to publications, they will find recent reports on food security. And, just get hold of one of those and, read bits of it. Don't have to read the whole thing, but just to try and get familiar with, current issues in food security.
Perfect. Well, we've covered all the questions that were submitted beforehand. That was quite a few of them there. Is there anything that you don't feel we've covered that you would like to touch on, or are you quite happy to leave it there?
I think we've got a broad range of questions today, so I think we've covered just about everything. I can't really think of anything pressing that I want to add to that. So yeah, I'm quite happy with the coverage.
Ideal. Well, if you do think of any questions after you've watched this back, please do get in touch. The administration email address is on the programme webpage there, that if you do have any questions, and the administration teams are brilliant, they'll do their best to help you. And yeah, I think all that's left to say is thanks very much for your time, Gareth, and thanks to all that have watched. And we hope to see you all in September. Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.